What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Football Casual. And today we're back on the debate reactions over on Zach Jellub's channel. Shout out Zach Jellub. Go check him out. I mean, if you're watching this video, you probably already know who that is, but he's been making great football content with other football content creators, and I aspire to be in this space. So shout out Zach Jellub. But today we're going to continue the John Terry versus 20 football fans video. I already watched the 15 goal conceded record debate. I gave my thoughts on that, so check out that video if you're interested. But today we're going on to the second argument, which is that there's a lack of number 9s in today's game. Let's see what the football fans have to say about that one. Like, subscribe also. All that good algorithm stuff will be much appreciated. But now let's get into the video.
There is a lack of number 9s in today's game.
There's a lack of number 9s in today's game. Two of the guys I've already pushed off. I've got hands on heads over how they would have loved that. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Go. Welcome.
Okay.
Hello, mate.
I would like half agree, but I think part of this has been that obviously the systems have changed. So,
I mean, to be fair, it's kind of similar to the first video. I know I paused it already, but off rip, he's not even disagreeing. And I know he said half agree, but people are coming up here and they're already half conceding. I don't know if it's because it's John Terry or maybe the arguments he's making aren't that controversial, so they're not that hard to agree with or to disagree with. But we'll see.
having two strikers always meant there's going to be more number 9s around. I think what we've had now is, they're still attackers, but they're wide forwards who score goals. The Mo Salah, Mane, those kind of players. I think obviously the game has changed, but there's still goal scorers all over the league in my eyes.
Okay, I would disagree for me. I'm in the academy at Chelsea. We have kind of number 9s that.
Before we get to John Terry, let me get my point. Just so I think he makes an interesting point because it's true. Systematically, there are going to be less number 9s in football because there are less teams running two striker formations, especially at the top level, and usually it goes top down, so people start following the top level. So as soon as that number 9, like especially Drogba at Chelsea, and people start following that pattern, 4-3-3, whatever. Now it's 4-2-3-1, whatever. It just goes down. Now you're going to see people in non-league football and even amateur football playing with one striker as opposed to two. Of course, there are going to be exceptions, but you kind of see that trend happening. But to be fair, I think even when there were two striker formations, one of those strikers wasn't always a traditional number 9 in the way that we view like the straight up number 9s. A lot of those guys were second strikers, which is, it's hard to compare one to one, but they have slightly different roles, slightly different skill sets. And I think honestly what we're seeing in the game today, and I think Culture Cam did a video on this, and I thought it was a really good point, is that a lot of the strikers or players today that we're trying to force into this number 9 sole striker mold are actually traditional second striker types. It's a really interesting thing to look at if you're interested. Maybe I'll link that Cam's video in the description.
All over the league in my eyes.
Okay, I would disagree for me. I'm in the academy at Chelsea. We have kind of number 9s that have drifted away into that kind of I call it the Thierry role, kind of out wide because they want the ball to feet. They want to kind of face the defender. I don't see too many players other than Haaland in today's football that get on the shoulder of a centre-half and want to stretch and make those runs in behind as well. And again, when you have players like the midfielders that Man City have or Fernandes at Man United, it's like he will make those passes if you make those runs as well. And I don't think defenders get tested enough, but also I think
I was going to say, what is your traditional number 9? Like, if you were to describe them as a striker, forward, like previous players that are like it, what is that?
Okay, before he gets into that, that's the other part of the Cam's video I watched, which is really that these second strikers who used to be second strikers are now wingers. Were really the goal scoring real threats. And a lot of their skill sets, I mean, it's evolved over time, so it's not one to one. But a lot of those players that you would see becoming a second striker back 15, 20 years ago, probably 20 years ago at this point, they're now playing on the wing. So you don't really, that's why you're really seeing a lack of this true goal scoring talent just straight in the number 9 position these days?
I think it's like an Alan Shearer, like can do everything, can get on the shoulder, can run in behind as well, quick, pacey, strong, athletic, good in the air. It feels like back in the day they were kind of ticked 9 out of the 10 boxes.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like in today's game it's like maybe 4 or 5 out of those boxes for me.
So I think like I have the same thing with certain players. I always watch Mbappe or even Rashford a few years ago, where like I know how good and dangerous you are in running in behind, and sometimes they come to feet too much. And obviously they're top players. They can do bits with the feet, but they're most lethal when they're running in behind. And I think that is a good point, that a lot of players now, especially when they get better and better, they want to be more involved. They don't want to be doing the selfless running all the time, which is what Haaland.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's happy to stay out the game, isn't he?
So at the top is because he continues to test back forwards. He's not like, his ego isn't too big to make those runs. But again, I think it's partly down to the game. The game has changed. I think there's more specialist players than generalist players now. So there's more players who can do specific things very, very well. Whereas back in the day, I think there was players that were more rounded. Obviously, you've still got some players who are very well rounded.
I would also debate that as well in terms of strikers, but defenders as well. If you're a striker and you're constantly making those runs behind, eventually a defender's going to switch off or be in the wrong position. I don't think the level of defenders is there either across the Premier League. So it's like, if you keep making those runs, you will eventually get in, whether that's by hook or by crook. A defender switching off or good timing of your run, because if you're a top striker, you are making intelligent runs, and you've got people like Lamps back in my day kind of making those passes that are just immaculate in terms of what they do.
Defenders?
Okay. I let him go for a while there. I think it's an interesting point because you do see these strikers or like these players who are top players, they do want to get involved in the play a lot more. I think he made a good point with that it's hard to find a striker who's just willing to just make the runs constantly. And to be fair, I think you could honestly make the argument, and maybe this is an entire separate video. John Terry brings up the lack of number 9s, the lack of defenders on the level. Right? A big part of it, I think, too, is the lack of number 10s on the level. Because even you're seeing now with Bruno at United, and I'm not the biggest Bruno fan ever, but I gotta respect game, is that when you have a true number 10, you can unlock a number 9, or at least make them look to a certain level. But if you have players who know, okay, there's not enough creativity behind me to get me the ball, even if I'm making these runs, then they want to start getting involved and dropping in and getting touches on the ball. It's an interesting development of the league, because right now we're really lacking true number 10s, true number 9s, and you could argue, like John Terry said, center backs, because if you're seeing a lack of number 9s in the Premier League, which you can all agree, I mean, right now, people can argue, just based on numbers, Igor Thiago is the second best striker in the Premier League this season. If that's the level we're at, I mean, no disrespect to Igor Thiago. I have him in my fantasy. I'm more than grateful for him. But if he can come and go crazy and have the second best scoring season after Haaland the season so far, that kind of says something about the level of strikers in the Premier League. And that's just the Premier League. You could talk about this across Europe, honestly. But I think it shows, because once you see someone the level of Haaland, who really is of the level of like, okay, this is a true bona fide number 9, the fact that he can come in and drop, 36 or I think 36 in his first season at Manchester City, he just exposed the level of the league, which kind of proves what John Terry's saying, that the level of center backs actually wasn't that good either. They just looked better because the level of number 9s wasn't that good. But Haaland comes in and slaps it around. Even this season, I know he's on not the best run in 2026, but start of the season, he dropped 20 goals on your head top like it was nothing. He does that every season. Just comes in and does that, even on the level of center backs in the Premier League, whatever you want to say that is. So I think John Terry makes a good point there.
But back in my day, kind of making those passes that are just immaculate in terms of what they do.
Defenders' level has dropped at the top level because they're so used to having the ball all the time. They're so used to controlling the game, playing on the halfway line, having the ball, and more emphasis on when you're coming through at a club like Chelsea, for example. How good are you on the ball? Because we're going to go into 80% of games dominating possession. Is that more important? Obviously, you still need to defend, but is that more important if you're going to have more possession than the opposition for a lot of the game.
Well, probably if you're at a top side like Chelsea, Man City, and all that, we can go on. It's like you have to be comfortable with the ball, but also back in my day, we had some really, like, you look at people like Rio that was first class dribbling the ball out. I was really comfortable on the ball.
You were pretty good, mate.
Players that I played with, Ledley, there's so many that were comfortable on the ball, but I think in our day, and I sound really old when I say that, back in my day, we made decisions on the pitch. You can hear it and feel it. I go to games now, you hear it and feel it from the supporters are going, oh, this is tight here. And if you're playing against Liverpool and teams like that and they're on the edge of the box ready to press, as a centre-half, I'm going, no thanks. I don't want this ball here. I'm comfortable. I have the ball every single day of the week, but you have to feel it. You have to feel the pressure. And sometimes you go in, okay, we had Didier, we can go long to Didier or long to Ivanovic. And sometimes you just got to mix it up.
Kish, well,
That's fair. That's a good point. Because I think I can understand the point he was making. I'm sorry, I don't know his name, the content creator who came up to debate in the Argentina kit, but I can understand his point that center backs now prioritize ball playing ability over, I guess, defensive ability, or maybe that's why you're seeing the level of center backs drop from 20 years ago or whatever. But Terry makes a point. I mean, maybe there are more exceptions than I'm not going to pretend like I was watching Premier League 20 years ago, but I've seen games of John Terry, and he on the ball, underrated at this point. I think John Terry's ball playing ability is underrated. Maybe, I don't know if that was more the exception than the rule back in 2006, for example. I want to say 20 years ago, but it's interesting that he says, even if you know we can play on the ball, at some point in time, you have to say, you know what? I don't want to be on the ball right in this game. This is not what this game calls for. And I'm putting my team at risk, accepting all this pressure. And that's funny he says that. This was recorded, I think, a month ago, a few weeks ago, that Chelsea right now are in the predicament that we are in love with playing out of the back. We don't have the facilities to do it consistently. Because once the press, a proper press, met us in PSG, we capitulated. And it doesn't even take PSG. We capitulate against a lot of teams. But it really shows. At some point, you got to make the call. Even if Liam Rossini or Enzo Maresca or whoever wants you to continue playing on the back, at some point, as the players on the pitch, you have to say, you know what? I'm playing it long. I know we don't have Drogba up front anymore, but even João Pedro can win some aerial duels. I'm playing it long, and we're going to take our chances on the second ball, a flick on or knock on or something, because playing out the back is actively costing us games. At some point, someone has to make that call, but we're talking about Chelsea that had all these international captains on the pitch. That's a completely different Chelsea than what we have today. So, with probably the same amount of red cards this season as they had international captains. Let's talk about it, for real. Let's keep it going.
Debated, mate, but you're off. Jake is here.
He's done his hair as well.
Jacob, go ahead, mate.
Yeah, I know, like you said there about...
I'm not going to lie, bro. John Terry just violated, bro. He tried to come up. Dude was racing, running like a track race, like Usain Bolt, to try to get in here.
Long to Ivanovic.
And he got absolutely bodied.
Kish, well debated, mate.
Can he get in here?
Jake is here.
Bodied.
He's done his hair as well.
Jacob,
That's
go ahead,
tough.
mate.
Yeah,
That's
I know,
tough.
like you said there about the back before, you said about the 4-4-2 and things like that. Do you not think the out-of-position setups have shifted so much that potentially the strikers that you're mentioning, the old-fashioned strikers who are running behind, aren't capable of playing anymore? Because teams now, especially if you're looking at mid-table teams or teams in that relegation battle, they need the striker to come deep and be involved with build-up to allow them to play through pressing teams. Like, I think now we're seeing so many more hybrid presses, so many teams that press a lot higher as well. I don't think it's possible to have someone who is running behind constantly, unless you're elite like Haaland, where you know every chance he will bury. And as much as there was some great strikers, I don't think anyone in terms of that clinical factor have the same thing as Haaland. Like, even when we look at Thiago, who I think similar, he's still very important to Brentford's build-up. He's not running behind every time.
Yeah. I would agree with that, and I think even teams like yourself, like Burnley, come up, get promoted. The last thing you guys want to do is play a high line, play 4 at the back. So a lot of the time, you used to be 5 at the back. So then you go as a striker, you then have to mix your game up. And again, going back to the players, really intelligent players. The manager didn't need to say to Rooney, go in the pocket if JT drops off, or if JT goes really tight running behind because you quickened him. Rooney done that because he felt it and stuff like that. So again, if you're playing against a team that's sitting deep, then you need to go in and link up and then kind of turn and then get out the back 5 in terms of you guys. But all dependent on what team you're playing against.
I just think with now we see so much more of that. I think as much as, like you said back in the day where it was a lot of 4-4-2, I think even now we do see a lot of where the majority of teams do still look to try press in a similar manner. Obviously it's never going to be the same shapes and things like that, but then you look at maybe someone who maybe is a bit of a throwback in terms of Victor Gyökeres, who we look at him in Portugal, was an elite channel runner, sensational getting in behind, could bully defenders in a sense. You look in the Premier League now where he's playing with Arsenal, who are up against those teams who will sit in. You know, I mean, one of his best, I know a lot of his performances have been against the relegated teams, but even then I think he's really struggled to be someone who runs in behind, because I think now as well a lot of defenders are so good in the channels these days, like you're looking at Mickey van der Ven and people like that. I think it's harder for someone to maybe play in the channels, playing behind as much as they might have done.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, but I see probably defenders a lot more quicker, a lot more agile these days. We often see, and I struggle with this, centre halves kind of marking someone from a goal kick and the striker drops off in the kind of halfway area and even further off the edge of the box, and it's like they go and go, and I'm sitting there in the stand going, I'm happy for you to have it there every single day of the week. So if that's Rooney, I'm going, I'll get to a point and go, you can actually have it there. My danger's here as a defender. And this is where they're so comfortable nowadays, because they're so athletic, so quick. They're happy to go in and leave my other centre-back 1v1 because he's also quick and can deal with the one over the top. So it is, again, it's mixing stuff up.
So I just think it is hard in terms of having...
I didn't know where to jump in there because they're going back and forth so quickly. But it's a lot of interesting points. I think, honestly, to sum it all up, the Burnley fan is kind of making the point that there's a lack of elite number nines. I mean, I know he's saying at lower level sides, and lower level sides it's harder for them to even have the pulling power to get these elite number nines. But even back in 25 years ago, and you had like Kevin Phillips getting relegated and scoring 30 goals or something crazy like that. Obviously, that's when I was before I was born. So I can't really talk crazy about that time, but I think the level is just not there. And they're talking about the center back play, but I think it's still because Haaland exists, and maybe you want to say Haaland's a unicorn, but because Haaland exists, or even Igor Thiago, what he's doing this season, the fact that people are proving it's possible to do this against these defenders, it just means that the rest of the guys aren't up to the level. It's just that simple. Maybe the defenders, maybe it's a matchup based thing too. Maybe because not many people have that physicality. But if, let's say, Mbappe came into the Prem as a number 9, and prime Lewandowski and prime Benzema and prime, Suarez, we just see prime. Suarez went crazy. But I think we'd see a completely different story. But it's an interesting thought experiment.
The top, so it is, again, it's mixing stuff up.
So I just think it is hard in terms of having, because like when you were saying before, a lot of the strikers you named there, like that was football back then. Your striker goes in behind. If your team's struggling, there's other players who will come deeper, but the focus is getting in that striker in the final third positions to shoot. Whereas now I think that's probably like.
But do you think those strikers would maybe struggle today?
I don't think so, because I think a lot of them strikers as well, in terms of, talking about people like Wayne Rooney, they could play in any system, maybe some of them would have, some of them wouldn't. Probably same as now. People like Haaland would still bag goals for fun there, but maybe
not against
someone,
Chelsea, but
maybe not. I don't know. But maybe someone like João Pedro, who maybe comes a little bit deeper and is a little bit less involved with running, is someone that could have struggled against someone like you. But like you say, defenders are so athletic now. It's probably something that eventually will flip on its head, where people do start to go back to going back. And I think we're starting to maybe see that in a sense in the Premier League at the moment. There's a lot of, maybe not a lot of, but they're starting to come through a little bit, because it is just that.
Chris Wood
shift.
last season, obviously, he was exceptional. We've seen obviously not been amazing this season.
But as well, the throwback last year of going really aggressive, good in the air,
100%.
timing, deliveries in the box, all of those bits where defenders don't really defend anymore. That's the big thing for me.
100%,
defenders don't defend as much as they do now. It's more playing out with the ball, and
that's why we did so well for so long on the dice. It went a big switch from people being disengaged to now you had Chris Wood, Ashley Barnes running. Well, they weren't very fast, but they would get themselves about, getting behind, hold up, pin a centre half. But yeah, like I said, I think defenders now make it so hard for a striker to actually do that. But in a sense of coming into feet, that's what probably is a way for them to get that advantage over a defender. Like we see people like Romero, who's dragged out of position, playing behind.
See, I wouldn't see that as an advantage for me. I'm going again. If I'm marking you and you drop deep and I'm on the halfway line, I'm going, you can have it there every day of the week. Because then I go, okay, you turn, I've got no one to mark. My other centre-back's got no one to mark.
That's where it also comes back to, I think Kish mentioned it before, when you talk about the wide forwards now as well. That is kind of a role where like even someone like Anton Semenyo with Evangelson when he was at Bournemouth, Evangelson would come deep, a centre half would follow, Semenyo would make that run in behind, and then you're as a centre half. I've obviously never played at your level, but as a centre half for me in my mind, I'd be thinking, right, he's gone for the ball, but I've also got this runner who's now coming off the shoulder of my fullback. You're then dealing with two things rather than potentially if you've got a striker who's pinning you. You know
What was that? I'm really intently listening to the argument. That's why I'm just sitting here silently. But I mean, bro was just mentioning him also being a center back, and I know he's making a joke about being on not being on Terry's level. People are laughing.
As a centre half for me,
but then the cameraman,
right, he's gone for the ball.
Tried to
I've
catch.
Also got this runner who's now coming off the shoulder of my fullback.
You're
then dealing with two
catch him laughing.
Potentially,
but that's what he zoomed in, bro. The craziest straight face. The timing on that was unfortunate. What was you trying to get?
The shoulder of my fullback. You're then dealing with two things rather than potentially. If you've got a guy pinning you know your job. You know what you're dealing with. You know you're battling with that guy. Whereas now, I think there's so much movement now in football, so much more fluid than maybe it was a while ago. I mean, again, it's probably before I was born, so I can't tell you factually.
I think that's a good debate. You're just younger than me.
Jake, well done, mate. Well
Thank you.
It was a good debate. I honestly think they're getting more into the weeds of the level of defending, or maybe the style of defending these days, where it's more, like you said, like Terry said, and I think it's true. And I think it's funny if you want to compare like someone like a Terry to someone like a Van Dijk, who I respect Van Dijk. Van Dijk's one of the greatest too, but I mean, not on Terry's level. I'm gonna just put that out there. But if you want to look back, even at the Chelsea game, the reason why people were trolling about Van Dijk twerking on it when Caicedo scored that long shot is because he's not engaging. Defenders don't really look to defend. They're all looking for their system to work for them. Okay, I'm going to take up this space, and you're going to take up this space, and he was hoping someone else would be there, and maybe we'll block the shot, but no one's really like, okay, I'm going to be that guy who's going to go in and make that tackle and take the ball off him, because it's too high risk, and they're all thinking about analytics. It's too high risk to put that in, but if he beats me, it's over. Versus back in the day where you just put a foot in and see what happens, put a challenge in. It's a completely different defensive setup, which kind of changes the way number nines have to, well, not kind of, it does change the way strikers have to play or choose to play. But I do think, like I've said throughout this video, if you're really on the level that Terry's probably thinking of, like a Haaland type, you can expose any of that.
Only a little couple minutes left in. And Ben's jumping in. Jack, I'll give you a minute. Don't worry.
So obviously you mentioned the kind of drop off
Hang on, bro. It's salty.
in striker quality generally across the league. If you were to put that Chelsea backline that broke the record into the Premier League now, could you name, outside of the obvious, Kane, Mbappe, Haaland, etc., strikers that would worry you? Now, are there any strikers in the Premier League that you think, like you mentioned about Kevin Davis, those guys back in the day, that you think would...
Keep going. I'm actually interested. I want to hear it. I do want to hear it.
They're like a handful of strikers that you think we might have a tough day today.
No, I don't look and go, I would be in trouble. So I'd enjoy the battle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got the elite being the elite, but even back in the day, you go, okay, Bolton away, fucking hell, this is going to be a tough afternoon today. Whether he's not going to run in behind, he's not quick, but all afternoon he's going to elbow me. It's going to be physical. He's good in the air, timing, all of that. I look now and go, I think they're a bit flimsy, me. And I think because they do go, I'll drop and I'll drop and I'll drop. And like I say, for me, someone who wasn't like very quick, I read the game really well. So again, if I keep the game in front of me and everyone's in front of me, you can make the best run in the world. I'm going to match it and I'm going to get there because I see it before you and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So again, defenders keeping the game in front rather than going into those areas, I think is a big thing.
So if you're playing against Newcastle, for example, you're much more comfortable dealing with a Voltemada who likes to drop in, link the play. But if you've got Visser kind of running in behind, who is a bit of a almost throwback striker in a sense that we haven't really seen that much of, you're more worried about that. It's kind of going the other way. And there's not as many strikers that do.
Well, again, there's your danger. As a centre-half, there's your danger. And I think people get obsessed with going, oh, it's man-to-man, I've got to follow you everywhere. And if you keep going, the manager's told me to do it and I need to do what the manager says. I think players don't make decisions. That's the biggest thing I think nowadays are going. Again, at some point I go, fucking hell, I'm 50, 60 yards now from my goal. I'm uncomfortable here. Actually, get it there and I'll go back. And again, the game's in front of me going, okay, you've now got 50, 60 yards. I've got my back four, my holding midfield, my two midfielders. You've got to get through seven of us to get anywhere near our box. I'm happy with that.
So look at someone like Thiago, for example, at Brentford this season, scored 16 Prem goals. I think 11 of them are non-penalties. Do you think if he was transported back into your day with the quality of striker that he's kind of shown himself to be, do you think he'd be able to score that kind of level of goals, or do you think the kind of median level of striker back in that day was still higher than what we're seeing now with the guys that are kind of chasing Haaland behind him? Like if you look at Ekitike, for example, he would surely worry you as a centre back in this day and age with his ability to make runs in behind, but also drop in, link, and all those kind of things. If you're putting those guys back into that era, that season specifically.
No, I would say that the average striker back in the day was a lot better in terms of quality and the whole game that they brought, whether that was pace or just pure goal scoring ability.
Yeah.
For me.
Also, there's probably more options as well because, I mean, someone else mentioned...
Matt, I'm going to call it.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Sorry,
Well done.
Hey, I was locked in too, bro. Usually I'm yapping on these videos, and to be fair, I still was yapping, but I was locked in. It's just interesting to get to pick John Terry's brain and see how he thinks about the game. That's why this debate ended up turning way more into a conversation about center backs and the art of defending in 2026 versus 2000. I guess they're talking about 2005, but let's say 2006 just for cleanness sake. But yeah, it's an interesting debate because the question is ended up being more about defending, but you can't really talk about one without talking about the other. He's saying the level of defenders back then was better, but also they had to be because the level of striker back then was better, which kind of encapsulates his entire argument. And he's saying both the level of defender and striker are lower today, even though the number 9 was the argument. It's an interesting debate. Let's see if he actually lets the guy who did his hair get in.
Well done. Great debate. Guys, you could be in this
Yep.
percentage.
Tough. Yeah, it looks like he did not. I'll probably watch the rest of this later for another video. But let me know if you enjoyed that. It's kind of tough to that one guy who he did his hair up and he did not get in. You hate to see it. I'm sure he will get in later in the video, but interesting debate. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is there a lack of number 9s today? Or at least, I mean, obviously there are number 9s, but in terms of like high level number 9s, maybe you could count on 2 hands the number of high level number 9s that you were actually worried about across Europe right now. Honestly, it'd be interesting to make that list of who are really the real threats in 2026. Does it really show the lack of number 9s? And also, conversely, or maybe simultaneously, is there a lack of real high level center backs? And does that go hand in hand? Let me know in the comments. There's a lot of interesting discussion here. Of course, John Terry, he's going to know better than most about it. So it's interesting to hear what he thinks. But like, subscribe, all the good algorithm stuff. Go check out Zach Gillup's actual original video. I'll probably link the Culture Cam's video on the death of the striker as well in the description. And I appreciate you guys for watching, especially if you made it this far. I'll see you guys next time, probably for the Chelsea game on Saturday. Peace.